The beauty of algae is that it feeds on the CO2 emitted by burning fossil fuels. It's a carbon-neutral system.
We've flown jet aircraft on the fuel, we've driven boats on the fuel, cars, you name it. So scientifically, it's a done deal. What the issue is now is economics.
But economics is no small issue for the companies trying to commercialize algae-based fuel.
It's been more challenging, I think, than many people assumed, in part because a lot of this is based on really the brutality of the marketplace.
That's Martin Sabarsky, CEO of a San Diego-based algae company called Solana. He says back in 2008, algae companies trained their sites on fuel because oil prices were skyrocketing.
There was an expectation that prices would keep going up, and it's really leveled off or gone down since 2008.
With oil prices down, pressure has eased on finding alternative fuel sources. Companies
that have kept fuel only as their business model are kind of the minority now. You've seen a larger number of companies that had biofuels or energy or petroleum in their names, and they've gone so far as to take that out of their name.
Like, for instance, Sabarsky's own company.
4 years ago, CAER and UK's Biosystems and Ag Engineering Department set out to prove that an algae-based system could recycle the CO2 in flue gas. With $1.8 million in funding from the Kentucky Energy and Environment Cabinet, CAER is now partnering with Duke Energy to test a pilot-scale algae system at East Bend Station.
The nice thing about the algae is that it does actually capture and sequester the CO2.
The heart of our process is the photo-bio-reactor, and it's a fancy word for a place to grow algae. And if you look at the words and break it down, you've got bioreactor, which means you're using a living organism to do a job for you. You got photo, meaning light. We're harnessing algae's ability to grow very fast and perform photosynthesis in order to take the carbon dioxide in flue gas and turn it into biomass.
Instead of acres of ponds, CAER's strategy is based on a closed system of photobioreactors to grow algae.
We have the ability to eliminate evaporation because we have an enclosed system. We have a way to minimize contamination because we don't have ducks landing in our tubes. But having a closed system, I think it actually offers a number of advantages, particularly from a weather point of view. Even in the cold of winter, even in the limited sunshine that we had, the algae did grow. The algae that we're using is a native species. It's here for a reason. It likes this environment. The challenge for us has been to develop a photobioreactor that would be expandable and that would scale up in a cost-effective manner. So the target price was $1 per liter of photosynthetic volume, and that's where we are.
CAER's system, made of plastic mailing tubes and off-the-shelf PVC pipes, is built by UK students and glued together on site. Expanding the system simply means adding more tubes.
I think they might be too close together at this point, where these are getting shaded by the rest. So looking at tube spacing and making the most efficient use of capital will be another major effort as we move forward.
Algae comes out of the photobioreactors and it goes into the harvest tank. In a few hours, thanks to flocculation that helps the algae stick together, it settles to the bottom of the tank.
It's very dark green, the consistency of pesto. That material is what we would feed to an anaerobic digester.
The anaerobic digester can turn the algae into methane that the power plant could burn for fuel. Or, using gravity filtration, wet lipid extraction, and upgrading, you can make renewable diesel and jet fuel. Or by removing more moisture with a solar dryer and dry lipid extraction, you can make jet fuel or produce fish food and animal feed.
You have to do work in the realm of feasible economics. From a biofuels processing point of view, it makes sense. It is not extremely profitable, but when you look at what's happened, you've actually captured CO2 from a dilute stream and turned it into a value-added product. We certainly have the ability to develop the technology to do this, and I think we're well on our way right now. We will bring back very large volumes of dewatered algae so that we can keep the chemists supplied for years. They can't do what they want to do unless they have a large quantity of algae, and that's something that we have the ability to produce at East Bend.
Focuses on turning algae into livestock feed and omega-3 supplements.
And this right here is sort of lovingly referred to as liquid gold.
They figure people will pay more for a bottle of pills than they will for a gallon of gas.
I don't believe you're going to find any algae companies that are going to hang their hat on energy.
Mike Mendez helped found another San Diego-based algae company, Sapphire Energy. But after 2008, he couldn't see algae-based fuels' path to profitability, so he left to launch another biotech company. He says the energy market had changed dramatically.
The number one factor is fracking. Fracking has changed the landscape.
Fracking involves injecting fluids into the ground at high pressure. It's being used to extract lots of new natural gas, and it's happening within U.S. borders. Politicians worried we'd never be energy independent without alternative fuel sources. But now, in 2014, imports are at a 20-year low. We're approaching energy independence, and fracking is getting us there. Algae just doesn't look so urgent anymore.
We were making a product that had to be made cheaper than bottled water. And with that is a whole set of headaches. The things that have stalled it were just out of our hands.
But Jim Lane, the publisher of Biofuels Digest, says the algae industry hasn't given up on fuels.
Most of us have heard about hydrogen. It has captured the attention of many researchers, and there are many new technologies that will see it becoming an everyday fuel. Yet there are no natural sources of hydrogen. It has to be made or extracted, and today more than 95% of this gas comes from fossil-based sources, which means it is not sustainable nor carbon-free because CO2 is released when it is produced. But a small percentage comes from natural or renewable resources such as wind or solar energy. This is known as green hydrogen.
We are working with one microalgae which is able to produce hydrogen. It's able to use the sunlight and use that energy to produce hydrogen.
But let me briefly explain what microalgae are. Microalgae are like the algae we can see when we go to the beach, but just much smaller. But they grow very quickly thanks to the huge amounts of CO2 they consume. You can think of them as little bioreactors that produce a lot of good stuff. And besides, they are extremely flexible and can adapt to many situations. They can even live in polluted water and, as they grow, make the water less polluted.
Microalgae can produce different kinds of biofuels. For example, biodiesel from accumulation of lipids, bioethanol. Very interesting also, they produce hydrogen. Hydrogen is a different kind of a biofuel which is 100% clean. It's supposed to be the biofuels of the future.
For me, it's very interesting and exciting to see that a unicellular, very small cell is able to use the sunlight, just water and CO2 to produce hydrogen. So it's a very easy way to get a biofuel.
What would it happen if I drink something of this microalgae? It would be a great experiment, but I am not going to taste it.
The green stuff is the microalgae, and they release an invisible gas, which is hydrogen.
Microalgae are photosynthetic organisms, and they're able to harness the solar energy and fix CO2. And this allows a process of electron transfer within the cell that with proton is able at the end to produce hydrogen.
There are different ways to make this gas. The research is about finding the optimal conditions to make the process really efficient. The researchers here are working with a combination of freshwater algae and a specific bacteria which are able to produce hydrogen too. In the growing room, they control a variety of parameters. They first grow the microalgae for a few days and then trigger the hydrogen production process. Neda Fakhimi shows us how you can test the result, the amount of hydrogen.
So we count the amount of each component in this amount of headspace.
So, here we now have hydrogen, but is it ready to be used as fuel for transport? Yes, it can be stored in a tank and be used in electric cars equipped with fuel cells. In these fuel cells, hydrogen is used to produce electricity, which then powers the car. As David said before, hydrogen itself is 100% clean because it does not have any CO2 emissions. Simply put, when this gas reacts with oxygen, it produces two things: electricity and water. So, hydrogen is a zero-emission fuel that will propel cars, trucks, trains, and even planes and rockets. It is very important for many industries too. To find out more about the future of this fuel, the Bloom team spoke to hydrogen expert Horst Steinmüller from the Austrian Research and Development Center on Renewable Gases called BIFA.
Hydrogen will be one of the solutions for a carbon-free economy, because you can use hydrogen in different kind of our industrial life. You can use it as fuel in cars or ships. You can use it as reduction medium in the industry, but you can also use it as storage material. If you want really to decarbonize our economy, then this hydrogen has to come from renewable sources. Otherwise, if you stick to the fossil, you will not decarbonize it.
What we have is a closed-loop photo-bio-reactor. So our goal is to produce the greatest amount of biomass from algae that we can. And by going vertical, we believe that we can increase the yield by increasing the surface area and the volume of material that get exposed to sunlight. So we have a system that continually recycles, so it's a dynamic system in a closed loop. So algae goes down, starts out in a tank, gets picked up by a pump, goes up into the reactors, and then gravity takes control, moves it through the reactors, they get exposed to sunlight, go back into the tank, and the cycle is repeated over and over again. I know that algae is the fastest organism, fastest growing plant on the planet, and it sequesters the greatest amount of carbon dioxide. But at the same time, it produces lipids, basically vegetable oil, and a lot of it. So if you look at a single cell of algae in the right species, as much as 50% of its body weight is a high-grade vegetable oil. So while we're sequestering carbon dioxide, we're also producing these high-grade lipids that can be used for a variety of purposes. The beauty of algae is the fact that we can actually be selective about what carbon chains are coming out of it. So for example, if you want to make jet fuel, we can give you a strain of algae that's going to make the carbon chains that are necessary to manufacture jet fuel much more efficiently than you can any other crop. Or if you want to make diesel for a truck, we can give you the carbon chains that are ideal for that. So we can tailor the lipids based on the species of algae that we're growing. If I grow an acre of corn, and I'm looking at it from the standpoint of producing oil, I can grow about 18 gallons of oil per acre per year. So now I'll move up, let's go up to the next highest, or what's the most prevalent, is palm. Palm, we get 700 to 800 gallons per acre per year. Algae, I can go up to 20,000 gallons of oil per acre per year. And that's just in an open pond system. That's not in a closed bioreactor system. The problem with surface is that, one, once the algae starts growing, light will only penetrate about an inch, inch and a half through the surface. So it blocks light from the rest of the surface. Two, we have an enormous amount of water evaporation, so we lose an enormous amount of water that we're constantly having to replace. And the third most critical thing to us is that we get contaminants from other algae species that just float in and out of the atmosphere, land in there, and become competitive with the algae that we want to grow. We try to recapture every drop of water that we can. And the only water we lose is what's actually bound up in the algae and goes into the oil itself and the byproduct for the algae. And once we've extracted the oil, we can even use the byproduct for feedstock, for soil remediation to make fertilizer, or we can ferment it and produce ethanol out of that. If we took 1/10 of the state of New Mexico and converted it into algae production, we could meet all of the energy demands for the entire United States.